What's up, guys, and welcome back to Jimmy Talks. This is going to be different than my normal videos where I break down or analyze various subjects, namely prepping, military tactics, and politics, but today I want to switch it up and talk about the worst job I've ever had in my life: hood cleaning technician. This was a couple years ago, but yeah, this job is straight up miserable. These are the guys who go into restaurant kitchens to clean the hoods, the fans, and the grease traps. It's honestly disgusting because you're covered in grease from food that's been cooked for months in their kitchen, and you're scraping it off the metal where it builds up from restaurants cooking food for months. You're using heavy duty chemicals that would burn your skin if it touched it. They were toxic to inhale, and they could cause cancer over time. The pressure washers were so strong that they could rip your skin off if you weren't careful. And, sometimes we'd have to climb these three-story buildings or taller with just a ladder and no other safety equipment. And one time they had us climbing one that tall, only to find out a week later that the ladder was broken the whole entire time we were using it for that week, including the three-story building. So I could have literally died. No more Jimmy talks if that happened 3 years ago. So there was no safety gear, just like no hard hats, no vests or mask for inhaling these toxic chemicals. Nothing at all. And the pay was a pathetic $18 an hour. Team leaders got $20 an hour, but it was still slave wages. So this job was also only night shift work, but the schedule was a mess anyways because it was made off of the restaurant's closing time. You can't go in to clean the restaurant if it's still open, obviously. So you never knew when you were starting, just that you'll be working into the nighttime. Sometimes I'd start at 5 p.m., sometimes at 3 p.m., sometimes at 9 p.m. So that also sucked big time because you can't make plans at all. The lead technicians were supposed to make the job site was running good and also acted as quality control for our work, but they were useless at leading or teaching because they were only there because they didn't get fired for something petty or quit after a week like everybody else did. I'll speak about being fired for something petty later because that's actually what happened to me. Because, whatever, I'll get into that later. But I got screamed at by a lead technician because I didn't hand him a phone charger while driving to a job site while we were in the company van. A grown man literally screamed at me, like at the top of his lungs, to hand him his phone charger out of nowhere. And I completely ignored him when he did that, obviously. That's like strange. And that's literally the whole story. That dude had anger issues or something from his home life, and he took it out on me. But anyways, I asked management to simply just not schedule me with him because he was problematic and he was doing stuff like that. And what they did was instead, they showed up to a job site, which meant they drove from Tennessee to my state, Kentucky. And they told me I must be lying or something because that guy would never do that. And then the team leader also denied just screaming at me in a van. So, yeah, without sounding like I'm bitching just a bitch, I'll move on. But management did nothing at all, even with another coworker there who witnessed it happen. I asked him to ask the guy who was there if that happened, and the manager said, no, it doesn't matter. This never happened. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? But yeah, anyways, then we had a new hire with like severe mental problems who threatened to murder me in public, literally. He said, if I see you outside of work, I'm going to kill you. And, this is because the company hired any person that had a pulse. They didn't care at all. They only had like 3 or 4 employees and they needed people to do jobs. So I started to think, am I doing something wrong to piss these people off? Like, am I the problem here? Because, why do I have a problem with 2 people here out of like 4 or 5? But really, it was just because management would hire anyone who applied without an interview or a background check or any vetting process at all. I had to keep reminding them. This guy said he'd kill me, all because I said he would drive crazy in the company van with us in it, and he almost got us into a car wreck multiple times, and they just ignored it. So anyways, after all of that, I called off one singular time in 5 months because I was legitimately sick, and management fired me. The next morning, I woke up to an email saying that I was terminated, and I was just like, okay, well, I don't really care. I had another job lined up anyways because I knew this place was a shithole. But yeah, they also didn't like that I didn't show up to what they said was optional, but was actually kind of required, which was a company Thanksgiving meal. 3 hours before our clock in time. And I lived 45 minutes away from the job. They expected me to show up to this, what they said was optional, Thanksgiving company meal. So, yeah, it was optional, but it was mandatory. Let that sink in. But anyways, management there was worthless. The schedule was inconsistent. You could make more money at McDonald's, and the healthcare insurance from the job cost a fortune. You were expected to climb 3-story buildings with a broken ladder and no helmet or any other safety equipment other than disposable gloves from the chemicals. The guys there got injured constantly from avoidable stuff like wrist sprains, this and that. I had a heavy piece of equipment fall on my wrist 3 years ago from that job, and it still hurts when I do push ups when I'm working out. So, yeah, I went to an urgent care, and the doctor there was actually a physician's assistant. They seen me and they said, "Yeah, we took an x ray. I don't actually know what's wrong with you." I was just like, "Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Thanks." So, yeah, I still have wrist pain from that job. But anyways, the company doesn't give a damn because they'll pay for an urgent care visit because they would make around $1,500 to $2,000 per job, like per restaurant cleaned. And we did like 2 or 3 of them a night, while they would only pay you $18 an hour. So, yeah. Also, if you wanted to make more money, you couldn't get overtime. It just wasn't guaranteed. Neither were the hours, so the paycheck was always bullshit and inconsistent. The management was also in another state, micromanaging you with phone calls, texts. They would also nitpick you about pictures of the job site because we had to take before and after pictures of our cleaning. So they never once said we did a good job. They just criticized us endlessly. No gratitude, no appreciation. I should have known to stay far away from this place when the longest tenured employee there was only there for like a year. It was insanely dysfunctional. I never had a job this screwed up and out of touch. They could only keep 2 or 3 core employees. Like I wonder why. So yeah, that job was like dysfunction on steroids. I've had bad jobs before, but nothing like this. No safety, no respect, no decent pay, no appreciation. Just grease, toxic chemicals that could give you cancer if inhaled long enough in the future, and management that treated you like a tool that they did not care to maintain. So if you were desperate and needed a paycheck like I was at the time, maybe you'd work there for a couple months until something better came up. But yeah, looking back, I shouldn't have even wasted my time. It wasn't worth it, and I've never had a job this insanely dysfunctional and out of touch, and I never want to ever again. That's my story about the worst job I've ever had. If you've got a horror story, drop it in the comments below. I want to hear it. I want to hear your lore. Until next time, I will see you all later. Jimmy Talks out.